What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. So last week I made the video breaking down the first round, but the only news we had for running backs was, of course, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. Only two running backs to go in the first round. Now we know how the draft has impacted every running back situation, so we'll go over the rest of those today. Before we start, though, have to start things off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was last season. Which running back to finish with a bottom 10 efficiency rating faced the lowest average amount of defenders in the box? The answer is actually Joe Mixon, and a lot of you probably sorted by the efficiency column on NFL Next Gen Stats, but you probably sorted from lowest to highest. But a low number means that you're a north-south runner, so you get up the field quickly. Well, that's efficient, right? You're efficient with your yards. But a higher number means you spent a lot more time moving behind the line, not really making it upfield. So if you sort by that way, then you're going to get names like Todd Gurley, Benny Snell, Balaj, Mixon, Barber, Fournette, Frank Gore. Those are the names you want to be looking for inefficiency. So no one's gotten it right so far, but I'm sure that somebody will at some point today. Today's stat: which running back with at least 10 targets had the highest percent of their team's air yards last season? All right, let's talk about some running backs. So if you remember, I said the best three running backs this year: Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. And if you were looking beyond that, then one that I liked was Trey Sermon, but he is far from a sure thing. I thought that top three was a pretty good bet to be like really good running backs. After that, it was Sermon. Then we kind of see an even bigger drop off into a pool that I just don't think is all that good. Don't think it's that great of a draft class. So with these four, it'll have an impact on the other running backs in their offense. But that is less likely to be the case with the rest. So we'll get into that eventually. So first, after we see, of course, Najee Harris and Etienne go in the first round. Remember, we talked about that in the last video. So if you want to see a breakdown on that, go to the, 2 videos ago, last week's video. Not going to do those today. Start off with Javonte Williams. Gets taken by the Broncos. And this might seem a little bit surprising to a lot of people, but there was actually some buzz that the Broncos were looking to take a running back relatively early. I, for sure, did not expect them to take Williams, though. I thought they might be taking like the 5th or the 6th running back off the board. Did not expect them to trade up to take Williams, because that is an incredibly important factor here. The Dolphins wanted to draft Javonte Williams. It was going to be in their early second round pick, probably the pick that goes right after the Broncos, but the Broncos trade up. They say, no, we really, really want Williams. They were trading away a 4th round pick just to move up 5 spots to get him. Now, I don't want to compare Williams to Jonathan Taylor, because that is like, I want to be clear on that, because they are not similar prospects. Like, Jonathan Taylor is still the vastly superior prospect. But it's a similar situation to what last year we were talking about. The Colts are not trading up for Jonathan Taylor if they don't plan on using him. Maybe they don't plan on using him for a little bit to start the season, because that's what happens with rookies sometimes. Sometimes they just don't get full run from week 1. But you had to know Jonathan Taylor was the future for the Colts. It's just what they knew was going to happen. Could it be a similar situation with Williams? They're like, listen, we want this guy to be a big part of our offense over the next 3 seasons. Let's trade up to get him. We know the Dolphins are taking him at their next pick. We know he's not going to be there. And we don't love the rest of our options at running back. And we don't want Melvin Gordon to be the guy going forward. Let's go and get our guy in Williams. Now, I don't know if that's 100% the conversations that were happening there, but Denver clearly really likes him, or they wouldn't have given up a 4th round pick. Teams don't do that. Teams don't just give up a 4th round pick to be like, well, we kind of like this guy more. Let's just go get him. No, they clearly like Javonte Williams. The big question becomes, what roles will they have? What will the split be between Williams and Gordon? Honestly, can't really know right now. We got to see how that one plays out in camp. Sorry if that's a little bit of like a disappointing answer, but it's the reality, right? We can't just sit here and say, no, it's going to be 70-30. What do you have that's like suggesting that's going to be the case? I will say this, though. For fantasy, for drafting, I'm very unlikely to draft Melvin Gordon this season, assuming like Williams stays healthy. Like, if he just pulls his hamstring in camp, he has a high ankle sprain, well, of course we're going to change that take. We're going to hop on the Melvin Gordon train. But assuming both these guys are healthy, I don't see myself drafting Gordon because A, he's getting up there in age. I don't think he's too old, but he's getting up there in age. B, pretty mediocre for most of last season, and that's probably why they started looking at Williams. And I just think that if we're going to look at like the trajectory of these players, Gordon is probably going to start the season okay and then kind of tail off as they give Williams more work. Well, when we draft, we're drafting the opposite of that. We never want to draft teams that are starting off super hot, but it's a bunch of older players or a bunch of players that we know are going to kind of tail off as the season goes along. We want our teams to get better and better as the season goes along, acquiring people in free agency, in trades, but then also we want our younger players to just be breaking out late. So if you gave me the option to draft Gordon or Williams, well, I'd rather draft Williams because even if he starts the season lower, just worse in fantasy, I have a better feeling that Williams will end the season as a starter in the games that actually matter, right? Like you don't want to peak in week 3. You want to peak in weeks 13, 14, 15, 16 because those are the ones that win you the championship, right? And so I will be drafting Williams ahead of Gordon, at least as of right now. Again, we could get news that completely changes this, but right now I have Williams at 27, Gordon at 29. Of course, among running backs, they're not both that early among all players. But yeah, I just think that you got to watch the news in this one, but assuming we get the news we're expecting, that it's going to be roughly a split to start, and then maybe Williams takes over, I'd rather have Williams on my team. After Williams goes in the early second round, we don't see another running back come off the board until Trey Sermon in the mid-third round, taken by the 49ers. This was a little bit of what I warned about this offseason. You know, people asked a lot why I kept avoiding Raheem Mostert, and this was part of the reason why. Like, they're not committed to Mostert being part of their future, and how could they? He's 29, right? Like, that alone tells you enough. Like, clearly, they're not like, yeah, we want Mostert to be the guy for the next, 2 or 3 seasons. Well, of course not. They're not relying on a 29-year-old undrafted running back who's never been over 775 rushing yards. Like, he's talented. He'll be used, but they're obviously not building around him. So it shouldn't be shocking they took a running back. It would have been shocking if, they traded up really high to take one of Etienne or Harris, but it shouldn't be shocking they took Trey Sermon. Again, I think that Mostert's going to be used. I think he'll have some good games, but he was risky before this. And now he's nothing more than just a late round dart throw with Wilson being undraftable. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they cut Jeff Wilson. Like, you're not touching Jeff Wilson in fantasy. As for Sermon, the third round is decent draft capital, and there should be a fairly clear path to him taking the lead job. But the most likely outcome is still that the 49ers rotate in multiple running backs. Sermon can be the top guy, but they might only give the top guy, 45% of the workload. And while he's the 4th best running back in this draft class, this was not a deep draft class. And I'm not 100% convinced on Sermon as a prospect. But who knows? Honestly, remember the Rams last year. We were not sure at all if they would stick with one guy. We thought that the odds were Akers would be the guy if they did it, but we had no idea if they were going to keep rotating in backs. And honestly, they did for most of the season until late when they finally used Akers as just the featured running back. Could that happen with Sermon? Maybe, but we probably are just going to need to wait, see what beat reporters are saying in camp. Right now, I have Sermon as running back 30, and Mostert will probably, I have to, after this video, do another run through. He's probably going to end up in that 40 to 45 range because he'll have some sort of workload. And if Sermon got hurt, yeah, he could be useful in fantasy. So you can't just dump him to 75. But in that range where it's I've kind of secured my running backs, who's someone who could be good if things went their way. Well, yeah, if things go his way, Mostert could still be good. But yeah, probably in that running back 40, 45, 50, that's my guess where he'll end up. The only other running back that I see not being taken as just pretty clearly a backup is Michael Carter. The Jets took him in the early 4th round, and while the Jets are bad, it's not a terrible landing spot. Before the pick, it was Tevin Coleman, LaMichael Pirine, Ty Johnson as the depth chart. Coleman is dust at this point. Pirine's fine. I thought he was a decent waiver pickup last season because there was no one. Their whole depth chart was injured or just terrible, and there was a clear opportunity for Perine. The coaches came out and they're like, yeah, we're going to see if we can feature Perine. Of course, then he gets hurt, misses most of the rest of the season. But the thing was, like, they were bad last year. They didn't have very good running backs, and Perine never did anything. Like, he never really broke out. And so if I'm looking at this backfield so far, Coleman, Perine, I'm not that scared of those two. Ty Johnson, he's nothing special. I mean, he's probably just going to be like the fourth option here. I mean, Carter could easily be the top running back at the end of the summer. The issue is, how good is he? I mean, I'm not supremely confident that he's, a lot better than Perine. Like, I don't know. I mean, he's 5'8", 200 pounds, so he's not super big. I only bring that up because, like, I do know he's a good pass catcher, right? Like, he's good in the receiving game. But are they willing to give him 17 carries? I don't know. I mean, in college, he was never given like a huge workload, right? And it's not like the Jets are going to be fantastic. Like, you can have a smaller workload on good teams because the touchdowns will be there. You'll be efficient because teams are not stacking the box or anything. Like, the Jets are still not good. They got this nice upgrade at quarterback, but Wilson's not coming in and fixing everything right away, right? They're still going to be bad. So I view Carter as a running back who could be good, could be nice in PPR formats, could have a really nice season, but it's all coulds. And like, I'm not spending an early round pick. I'm probably not spending a mid round pick. So it'd just be a late round pick. And I do think people are going to start looking at the Jets depth chart and be like, ooh, look at all this trash. And they spent, an early fourth on Carter. Maybe he's going to be good. And they'll start talking themselves into him in like that middle late rounds, like not in the 5th or 6th, and maybe in like the 7th or 8th or 9th rounds. And to me, that just like feels a little bit too early for someone who I'm really just not even sure is all that good on a team I'm pretty sure will be mediocre to bad. So I will probably not be drafting Carter, but if he stays as like a really late pick, anyone's worth a shot really late. So that'll do it for teams who drafted a rookie, but there were a few situations that got a whole lot better, through teams not drafting running backs. And the biggest three are Dolphins, Falcons, and Bills. The Dolphins had 7 picks and only spent a 7th round on a running back. The Falcons had 9 picks, didn't take any running backs. The Bills had 8 picks, 0 running backs as well. So after the draft, Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Salvin Ahmed, and Zach Moss have their stocks going way up. The only ways now that a running back can be added to these teams is through a trade, which feels a little bit unlikely. The remaining free agents, or if someone is cut, and for that one, I mean, we can't like really envision, a really good running back getting cut and joining the team. It could happen. It happened with, I don't want to say really good, but like Fournette last season. It's like no one we all thought it was a possibility, but no one was like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to get cut and then he's definitely going to join this team. Like, I guess someone like Fournette could get cut and join one of these teams, but realistically, the odds of that happening are low, and it's not going to happen to all of them, right? So the most likely outcome is that if these teams add a running back, it is through the top remaining free agents, who are Duke Johnson, Rex Burkhead, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, DeAndre Washington, and Bryce Love. Maybe Duke and Rex would be 2 that would be kind of annoying for these teams to add, right? Like, not guys who would come in and just dominate workloads, but they'd be annoying. They'd take enough of a workload for us to just be like upset and see like, oh, they could have had a really nice season with some of these running backs, but then Duke came in and took all the receiving game work, and now it's just mediocre, right? Like, it'd just be annoying for those 2. But are we really scared of anyone on this list? No. So it seems like Davis, Gaskin, Moss are going to be really, really good mid-round picks, at least right now, with Ahmed being a top handcuff, since we know the Dolphins like using one lead back, and they've already trusted Ahmed with that role a few weeks last season. So right now I have Mike Davis as the running back 21, so in that kind of Chris Carson, Kareem Hunt range. I have Gaskin as running back 24, so basically just right after that range. And then Zach Moss as running back 28, which is basically the end of the starters. Maybe that moves up a little bit, but we still have to acknowledge that for now, Singletary is still there. He'll take a little bit of the workload, even though we think Zach Moss is better. But then also remember Josh Allen, mobile quarterback, going to take some of the rushing touchdowns, not going to throw to running backs as much. So I love Zach Moss as a talent, but we have to consider those things. He is still probably in like the mid-20s for me. Again, those rankings are going to change throughout the summer though, so just check the website to get the latest rankings as they change, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.